answered in LTV are good to go.
Order. I call this meeting to order. This is the Standing Committee on Human Resources. My name is Chris Palmer. I'm the MLA for Kings West, and I'm the chair of the committee. Today, in addition to reviewing appointments to agencies, boards, and commissions, we will hear from the Department of Labour, Skills and Immigration, the Nova Scotia Federation of Labour, and the Centre for Migrant Worker Rights of Nova Scotia regarding strengthening workers' rights and protections in Nova Scotia. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone in the room to please put your phones to silent so we don't have any interruptions there. And I'd like to ask all of our committee members to introduce themselves for the record, stating their name and their constituency. We'll begin with MLA McLeod.
Good afternoon, Marco McLeod, Pictou West.
Good afternoon, Tori Rushton, MLA Cumberland South.
Good afternoon and welcome, Diane Timmins from Victoria the Lakes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adi Gogi-Fadari. I'm the MLA for Clady Park West.
Good afternoon, Derek Marmarket, the MLA for City Member 2.
Good afternoon, Paul Wozni, MLA for Sackville-Cobequid, and I use he, him pronouns.
Hello, I'm Krista Gallagher. I'm the MLA for Halifax-Chebucto, and I use she, her pronouns.
Thank you, everyone. And for the purposes of Hansard, I'd also like to recognize the presence of Legislative Counsel Killian Schlemmer to my left and Legislative Committee Clerk Judy Kavanagh to my right. So at this point, it's our practice in our HR committee to do our agencies, boards, and commissions appointments first. So I will look to the PC Caucus to make a motion for our boards and commissions appointments. I believe MLA Timmins? Yes, MLA Timmins.
I was just reading a message and I shouldn't have been paying attention. I do apologize. For the Department of Justice, I move to recommend P. Earl Muse be appointed as member to the Accessibility Advisory Board.
There's a motion on the table. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The motion is carried. MLA Timmins, thank you. Appreciate that. We will now move on to our meeting topic for the afternoon, and that is strengthening workers' rights and protections in Nova Scotia. And I'd like to welcome all of our witnesses who are here this afternoon, and I'd like to ask everybody at the table to introduce themselves individually, and then I'll come back to opening statements. So we'll begin with Ms. McGrath.
Hi, I'm Allison McGrath. I'm the Senior Executive Director of Labour Services at Labour Skills and Immigration.
Ryan Grant, Deputy Minister for the Department of Labour, Skills and Immigration.
Vanessa, Chouinard, Associate Deputy Minister of the Department of Labour, Skills and Immigration.
Melissa Marsman, she, her, President of the Nova Scotia Federation of Labour.
Stacey Gomez, Co-Founder and Executive Director of the Centre for Migrant Worker Rights, Nova Scotia.
Thank you, and once again, welcome. At this time, I'd like to give any of our guests who have opening statements to offer those to us, and I believe Deputy Grant? Yeah, Deputy Grant.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to talk about strengthening workers' rights and protections, something that's truly at the core of our work. It's about making sure every worker in Nova Scotia has a job that is safe, fair, and respectful, free from both physical and psychological harm. We're seeing real progress. Our workplace injury rate is now 1.19 time loss injuries per 100 workers, one of the lowest in the country, and a sign that workplaces are becoming safer. At the same time, more than 16,000 workers received support through our Labour Services Division in 2025, helping resolve issues and ensure fair treatment on the job. That matters because when people feel respected at work, when they know they're being treated fairly, they're better able to support themselves and their families. And that's what strong communities and a strong economy are built on. We also know this has to work for employers. Clear, fair, and balanced rules help create the conditions businesses need to grow and create good jobs. So our approach is to support workers while also helping build workplaces where both employees and employers can succeed. You can see that balance in areas like wages. Since 2021, minimum wage has increased by more than 30%, helping workers keep up while still providing predictability for employers. And we know cost of living pressures are real for many Nova Scotians, which makes it even more important that workplace standards stay fair and up to date. That's why we regularly compare ourselves to other provinces and keep listening to workers and employers as we look at where we can improve. Of course, fairness only works if it's enforced. Employers have a responsibility to follow the law, and when they don't, we take action. Last year alone, our safety team conducted more than 3,200 inspections, and our labor team resolved over 950 complaints. That reflects a system that is both proactive and responsive. Our teams are out there every day, educating, inspecting, and stepping in when needed. And it's important that workers know they are not powerless. If someone feels they are being treated unfairly, we want to hear from them. There are ways to raise concerns anonymously, and we can step in proactively to make sure workplaces are meeting their obligations. We're also strengthening protections against workplace harassment. New regulations came into effect last year. They require employers to take a more proactive approach, including clearer policies, stronger investigation processes, and better protections for workers who come forward. This builds on existing requirements and makes it clear that harassment, including psychological harm, has no place in Nova Scotia workplaces. It also gives workers more confidence that concerns will be taken seriously and addressed properly. We're also focused on protecting people who may be more vulnerable, including foreign and migrant workers. These workers play a vital role in our economy and our communities, and they deserve the same protections as anyone else: fair pay, safe conditions, and equal treatment under the law. We're seeing more people come forward and get support, which is encouraging. And we're not waiting for issues to arise. 2024-25, we launched 40 proactive investigations of businesses employing foreign workers. Safety remains at the heart of everything we do. Every workplace fatality is a tragedy, and when they happen, our focus is on understanding what went wrong and doing everything we can to prevent it from happening again. We're also working closely with the Workers' Compensation Board to improve support for injured workers. That means better access to care and stronger support to people to help people recover and return to work safely. Today, about 77.6% of injured workers are back on the job within 90 days, exceeding WCB's target. That's a positive sign that the system is working better for people. Following the recent review of the workers' compensation system, we've made important updates: strengthening benefits, improving accountability, and modernizing how the system works. Workers now receive full indexing of their benefits, and employers have better tools and information to support return to work. Altogether, this creates a system that is fairer, more sustainable, and focused on recovery. At the end of the day, strong workplaces support a strong economy. We'll keep listening, learning, and taking action, because protecting workers isn't just good policy, it's the right thing to do for Nova Scotia's future. Thank you, and I look forward to the questions that you may have this afternoon.
Thank you, Deputy Grant. We will now, I believe, Ms. Marsman, you have some opening comments?
Thank you. My name is Melissa Marsman, President of the Nova Scotia Federation of Labor. The Federation of Labor brings together 70,000 workers from over 350 member locals to advocate and campaign for better working conditions for all. The topic of today's committee, strengthening workers' rights and protections, is a timely one, as Nova Scotia continues to fall behind the rest of Canada when it comes to setting minimum standards for protecting workers. Workers in Nova Scotia have fewer holiday, vacation days, and paid sick days than workers elsewhere in Canada, and the longest work week at 48 hours. The weak labor standards we do have are not universally enforced. The system is entirely dependent on vulnerable workers reporting infractions, rather than active enforcements like we have with OH&S. We need to amend our labor standards code, as other jurisdictions have, to recognize that the nature of work in our province is changing. Labor standards are designed on the assumption that workers have one long-term employer that provides them with full-time employment. This isn't the on-the-ground reality for 1 in 3 workers in Nova Scotia. Of course, the best thing we could do to strengthen workers' rights and protections is increase the density of unionized workers in Nova Scotia. Unionized workers are more likely to have stable work, paid sick days, vacation time, and a slew of other workplace protections. And it's not only workers that benefit. Employers will have the advantage of a stable, healthy workforce with less turnover. Protecting workers, helping employers retain skilled staff, and growing Nova Scotia's economy are all mutually reinforcing goals. Government could signal this understanding could signal they understand this by changing policy to allow single-step certification when workers decide to exercise their democratic rights and form a union. I look forward to our discussion today.
Thank you, Ms. Marsman. And now we'll ask Ms. Gomez to deliver her remarks.
Thank you. Migrant workers, also known as temporary foreign workers, play a vital role in Nova Scotia's food systems, communities, and economy. Many return to the province year after year. Since 2021, the Centre for Migrant Worker Rights, Nova Scotia, has supported over 8,000 non-unionized migrant workers across the province through outreach, rights education, support services, and more. Last year, workplace injuries accounted for 65% of our casework and helpline interactions, while labor rights issues accounted for 13%. Since 2015, the number of migrant workers employed in Nova Scotia has more than doubled. In 2023, over 4,000 migrant workers were employed in Nova Scotia, with the majority in agriculture as well as the seafood, as well as the food and beverage manufacturing industries, which includes seafood processing. Our recent reports, Listening to Women Migrant Workers and Heavy Hearts and Minds, highlight serious labor and human rights concerns that have been voiced by 118 migrant workers in these sectors. For example, Carrie Ann Burnett, who is here with us today, worked as a migrant farm worker. After she was diagnosed with cancer, her employer fired her. As a result, she lost her housing, health coverage, and her immigration status was put at risk. We worked together to ensure that she could access urgent healthcare coverage. Migrant workers in Nova Scotia are employed through the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, which a 2024 United Nations report called a breeding ground for contemporary forms of slavery. Migrant workers are typically only permitted to work with one employer, which is named on their work permit, and the employer has control over key aspects of their lives while they're working in Canada, thereby limiting the workers' ability to exercise their rights. In our study, 77% of migrant workers feared that they would be fired for simply taking time off to address health needs. As a Jamaican migrant worker shared with us, they want you to work 7 days of the week and you cannot object. Our recommendations to the Nova Scotia government include: 1, strengthen worker protections in the Labour Code, including removing agricultural exemptions for overtime and holiday pay, introducing paid sick days, requiring advance notice of work schedules, and extending the complaint period to 12 months rather than 6. 2, strengthen enforcement and compliance mechanisms by conducting routine, targeted, and unannounced inspections in key sectors employing migrant workers to ensure that employers are following labor and safety rules. 3, increase the minimum wage to a living wage to ensure workers can meet their basic needs. And 4, provide provincial healthcare coverage, MSI, on arrival to all migrant workers to ensure that they have equitable access to healthcare services. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. So we will now begin our question period for our members to ask questions of our witnesses. Just a reminder to wait till I recognize you before you speak and the red light comes on. And we will begin with the NDP Caucus, who will have 20 minutes. And I believe we'll begin with MLA Wozni.
Thank you, Chair. A recent report from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives shows that Nova Scotians work more hours than the Canadian average, yet they earn $140 less per week than the Canadian average. Ms. Marsman, I'm wondering if you can talk about why you think this is.
Ms. Marsman.
So thank you for your question. And I think the weakness in Nova Scotia labor standards and the Trade Union Act play a role in this. For instance, Nova Scotia workers work the longest work hours at 48 work hours, and the other provinces have moved to the 44 or 40-hour work week. When Nova Scotia workers need to work an extra day to start earning overtime compensation to their peers in British Columbia, wages are lower. You know, you work the extra hours, you're not getting as much on your paycheck. It's also the case that we've seen growth in precarious workers in Nova Scotia. The CCPA found 1 in 3 workers were in low-paying and unstable jobs. And probably the biggest contributor in Nova Scotia's low union density, where only 30% of workers are unionized. So the Federation of Labor will always promote unionization of workers. Unionized workers earn more, and they have safer and more stable work environments with stronger protections around sick days, holidays, and vacation. So the government should work as partner with workers to increase union density in Nova Scotia, and the Federation of Labor is willing and able to help and partner with this.
Thank you. MLA Wozni?
Yeah, I just want to sit for a minute with one of your comments about sort of the lag in Nova Scotia as it relates to overtime pay. You know, broadly speaking, Nova Scotian workers have to work a full extra day, 8 hours more than their comparative siblings in other provinces before they earn a dime of overtime, and that excludes any consideration of substantial carve-outs that leave some workers without any access to overtime at all. But even if we just look at those in Nova Scotia, that if we lowered the threshold for overtime from 48 to 40 hours, that would mean an extra $500 a month for most Nova Scotian workers. Ms. Marsman, I'm wondering if you can comment, what good reason in your, do you see to not lower our overtime threshold to 40 hours per week, given the national landscape?
Ms. Marsman?
So did you say what good reason not to? Yeah. Oh, yeah, there is no good reason not to. I would say that, the health and safety of these employees is at the forefront. During the pandemic, we know people went to work, not even during the pandemic. We have workers who are working these overtime shifts because they don't make enough money in this province. So they're going to take those shifts. They're going to burn out. That's going to put a strain on our healthcare system where there's already a strain. There's a cost to the employers. It's the burnout, it's the increase in staff turnover, which is a significant cost. So if we allowed people the 40 hours, the regular 40 hours, and then any additional hour over that would be overtime, I think it would cut down on the burnout of the people of this province.
MLA Wozni?
Another area where Nova Scotia is clearly behind the rest of the country is in tip protection. We all know the vital importance of the food and beverage sector in our province and the role that it plays in tourism. But most other provinces have clear rules to make sure workers actually get the tips that they've earned at the end of the day. Nova Scotia has no such protections. Employers here legally can take in whole or in part the tips that workers rightfully earn. What is the Federation of Labor's stance on this matter, and what steps should government be taking to close this gap?
Ms. Marsman.
So to start, theft is theft, and it's wrong. We all know that theft is wrong. These workers are some of the lowest paid workers in this province. As a consumer, if I was going to, let's say, a restaurant, and I'm giving a tip to the server, that's who I want to have that tip. If I think, not just myself, if the consumers knew that the tips were going to the employers, would we leave it? I know I wouldn't. This is a hard one to really to think about because, like I said, theft is theft. They're the lowest paid workers in this province. And why would an employer think that that is right to take their money? The government really needs to put some legislation in place so that this is wrong and employers are held accountable when they're stealing from their employees.
Thank you. MLA Wozni?
I'd like to turn this question to the Deputy Minister for Labour, Skills and Immigration. We've heard a lot about gaps in our labour legislation so far today. I'm sure none of this is a surprise for the department. The minister, on repetitive occasions in the legislature indicates that jurisdictional scans not only have been done but are being done regularly on these matters to see how Nova Scotia compares. I'm wondering if you would commit to tabling the results of these scans for the committee.
Deputy Grant.
Great. I appreciate the question. To your point, looking comparatively across Canada, there are many different regimes related to overtime pay, related to various provisions in the Labor Standards Code, and the comparators really across Nova Scotia. For areas like minimum wage, the number of unpaid sick days, any degree of protections, we do have a good sense of where a snapshot of today is for various jurisdictions. Of course, that can be tabled with the committee. I'd also say forums like this, to the minister's point in question period and dialogue too as well, hearing from various stakeholders and commitment to ongoing reflection is really critical. And I also think contextually it's important to identify a labor standards code is meant to be a set of minimum standards. And again, also for context, lots of workplaces, lots of job sites, there are individuals who are working within employment contracts, within collective agreements as well, that would have varying benefits that would be in excess of what is identified in the Labor Standards Code.
Thank you. Emily Wozni?
Thank you for that response. We look forward to receiving the results of those jurisdictional scans at a later time. We know right off the top that Nova Scotia is at the bottom of the barrel nationally as it relates to overtime protections and the absence of any legal protections around tip theft. When can Nova Scotians expect to see action on things like aligning overtime pay and tip theft protections with the best case scenarios across the country to ensure that Nova Scotian workers enjoy the same level playing field with the best that Canada has to offer?
Deputy Grant?
Again, thank you for the question. Really complex, again, different sets of standards that exist across Canada. I'll give you one example. So even the difference between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, where New Brunswick would have a threshold of 44 hours, but also based off of a 1.5x for minimum wage as a guarantee versus in Nova Scotia and some other jurisdictions where it would be based off of regular pay. And so these are really complex matters. Of course, finding the balance between what's appropriate for all those involved, for employees and employers, is really critical and really important. And the same would be true for the dialogue around tip protection measures as well. So as I mentioned in a prior response, certainly a commitment to ongoing reflection for these matters, and very much appreciate the perspectives being raised.
Thank you. Emily Wozni?
We're looking at some research and reflecting on some facts that shows that Nova Scotia is an outliner and not in a good way as it relates to minimum protections for workers that whose work happens outside of some of the lowest union density in the country. Interestingly, we've heard the Premier be a champion. If it's good enough for other places, it's good enough for Nova Scotia. And yet, we see protections for workers in places elsewhere in Canada not being afforded Nova Scotian workers. And we know that for businesses that want to attract employees here, those minimum standards govern 70% of Nova Scotia's workplaces. And if I'm a worker making an informed decision about whether I want to do my work here or whether I want to do it somewhere else, why would I want to come to the least competitive workplace as it relates to minimum protections for me, for pay, for sick time, and a host of other things? We've got lots of research in the bag on top of jurisdictional scans that show Nova Scotia is an outliner in a negative way. Why do you think it is that our laws continue to lag behind the rest of our country as it relates to protecting workers?
Deputy Grant?
Again, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. I think it's also important to reflect on the last number of years as well, and a series of measures that have been put in place related to supporting workers and worker protections, showing the commitment the department and government have to making improvements. So including in 2023 about protected leave for end of pregnancy without birth. 2024, including gradual onset stress for compensable injury, as well as duty to cooperate measures. 2024, we've started the requirement for employers to have harassment policies in place as of September. 2025 also saw us include return to work measures, as well as increasing injured worker benefits by way of indexation for their injured worker benefits. Also, last year, having 5 unpaid sick days be a protection and provision, and then also increasing domestic violence leave from 3 to 5 days. So there have been a number of initiatives and efforts as of late to look at a number of different areas for worker protection to advance and strengthen.
Thank you. MLA Wozni with about 7.5 minutes.
Thank you. Ms. Marsman, congratulations on your election. It's I want to say recent, but it's getting to be 1.5 years since you took the role. I'm wondering if you can talk to us, as a representative of 70,000 workers. Your work doesn't only advocate for workers in a union setting, but for workers more broadly. You are an important voice for workers and working conditions and workplace justice in our province. Arguably, sort of the apex voice in this sphere. I'm wondering if you can talk to us about the work that the Minister of Labour, Skills and Immigration has done to seek out your input and establish regular or ongoing contact with you to find out how government can strengthen workers' rights in the province since taking this role in 2024.
Ms. Marsman.
Thank you. It's been 6 months, not 1.5 years. I'll correct you on that one. So I have not had the pleasure of speaking to Minister Young since I've been elected. I know prior to me being in this position, I was the Secretary-Treasurer and the past President. Danny Kavanagh, I think it was early 2025. There were 2 meetings that were scheduled that got canceled. So I do hope soon that the minister will contact our office so that we can have some frank discussions on things that need to be changed to help all workers in this province. I will say that we've worked with LSI and WCB closely, and there is a great working relationship. We have come to the consensus that we can agree to disagree a lot of the times, but it's a good relationship, so I'm happy with that. But also, not just Minister Young. Today I read the story in CBC about the teachers' union. Minister McGuire sent the letter out to the teachers. Why? Before he did that, why is the government not contacting the unions? It could have been a quick phone call to Peter Day, the president of the teachers' union, to say, hey, this is our issue. I would love, and I hope that it happens in my tenure till next year, that, when there's an issue with labor or unionized, non-unionized workers, that I get the respect that my predecessor got and get the phone calls or the emails and have those open dialogue and the discussions with the ministers that I think the workers in this province deserve.
Thank you. MLA Wozni.
Thank you for that. So far, we've been talking about what this government could be doing to make sure employers pay their workers fairly. But there are also some major red flags with this government's action as an employer of late. For instance, there are thousands of early childhood educators who have been waiting 2 years for back pay as a result of a settled collective agreement that continue to go without thousands of dollars in money that they've actually earned. There are some troubling instances where government is leveraging recent legislation to be able to fire public servants without cause across senior government ranks. And right now, we have thousands of long-term care workers actively on strike entering week 4. in what appears to be a dispute between a minister who says a 3-year-old offer is good enough and they should just take it, without recognizing that the offer, if it was taken, would put workers several dollars an hour behind a living wage. I recognize that the Department of Labor, Skills and Immigration doesn't necessarily hold sway over these approaches and these decisions, but I'm wondering if you could talk from a Federation of Labor perspective about how the Federation views this government's performance as an employer.
Ms. Marsman.
So this government's failing Nova Scotians. They're failing workers. These ECE workers, it's 2 years that they've been retroactive pay that is owed to them. It's time to put the money in their bank accounts. No questions asked. The collective agreement was signed. We're done. Put the money in the bank accounts. For the long-term care workers, it's 4 weeks. I've been on the picket line with many of these people, and the stories that I have heard are heartbreaking. There's one story. There was an employee, 18 years, has worked as a long-term care worker for 18 years, and in 18 years has made $4 an hour. That was their increase in 18 years. So 18 years ago, they could afford an apartment, food, basic needs. Fast forward 18 years now, and they're making $18, 18 something an hour. They had to give up that and move in with their parents because they cannot afford to live. I think the minister needs to go to the picket lines and have these discussions with these people, or go back to the table with CUPE, and also not put CUPE and the members as two entities. They're one. So it's time to go back to the bargaining table. But before that, have a discussion with these workers and see what the issues are. Like you said, it's going to put them at, what is the living wage, $27.60? These folks aren't even making $20 an hour. So it's time for the government to get back to the table and help these workers.
Thank you. MLA Wozni with under 2 minutes.
Thank you. A final question for President Marsman. The gap between the province's living wage and the minimum wage is $10.85 per hour. That's the largest gap between living wages and minimum wages in all of Atlantic Canada. I'm wondering what you can offer in terms of steps that government can and should take to close this gap.
Ms. Marsman.
Thank you. So when we consider increases to the minimum wage or any wage, we can't ignore the cost of a living wage. The measurements that we think best accomplish this is the living wage. Nova Scotia's living wage is $27.60 an hour. This amount is calculated as the income you need to afford food, housing, utilities, childcare, and still have enough money to live a decent quality of life and maybe save for the future. Basically, it's the amount that you could start putting some money aside and stop living paycheck to paycheck, which is not happening for many Nova Scotians. 50% of workers in Nova Scotia earn less than the living wage, and 30% of Nova Scotians earn less than $20 an hour. That's a shame, but the gap between the minimum wage and the living wage in Nova Scotia has doubled since 2018. I'm not going to sit here and have a minimum wage increase mean nothing, but they clearly need to keep pace with the cost of living, which is not happening. We would like to see the government strike a fair wage and decent job commission that brings together workers, industry, labor law experts, and advocates to recommend and track progress on creating better working conditions in Nova Scotia for all workers.
Order. Sorry, that concludes the first round of the NDP. I did warn everybody. That concludes the first round of questioning by the NDP Caucus. We'll now move on to the Liberal Caucus. MLA McGrath.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being with us today. There's lots to unpack. I have about 10 minutes, so I'm going to get right into it. I'm going to actually focus my time on the Nova Scotia Community College. So the Nova Scotia Community College will see a 3% workforce reduction as a result of almost $10 million in cuts to operating grants. This comes at a time when the province claims to be focusing on improving skills trades offerings and trying to attract skilled trade workers from out of the province. My first question to the department, how many layoffs have already happened, and what areas of operation are these jobs coming from?
Deputy Grant.
I appreciate the question. NSCC, as an organization, board governed, of course, Crown Corporation, but they'll be making decisions related to their operations, and they can speak to what those intentions are. Of course, as a primary training provider in Nova Scotia, a principle will always remain true of providing high-quality training for students, for the workforce of what we need today and tomorrow. Recently, we've created an Institute of Skilled Trades to really focus on looking at high-quality training and the skills and competencies that employers require. So we're leaning in with NSCC and employers and lots of training providers, whether that's BTAC, a lot of unions in the skilled and construction trades as well. There's a lot of important training providers in the ecosystem. But back to your question again, NSCC will be best positioned to speak to the decisions that they'll be making related to their operations.
Emily Mumbercat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to continue on that topic, so this was year one. Is the through you, Mr. Chair, to the department, is the expectation is that this is going to be multiple cuts over 4 years? Are you looking at a 3% workforce reduction over this year alone? But also, there's been a lot of conversation that this is a 4-year plan where you're going to see that for the next 3 years too as well. Is that the thought of the department? Is that what NSCC is going to have to grapple?
Deputy Grant.
Certainly in departments and Crown corporations, there will be a multi-year response effort on multiple different fronts. Of course, the fiscal reality that we're facing in Nova Scotia and every jurisdiction really in Canada is facing. These are discussions that are happening among departments and among entities all across Canada of what is it that we require and need in response to 2026 and what's ahead of us. I certainly will not prejudge the budgetary process for executive branch and legislative branch in years to follow, but at this moment we expect a multi-year plan to roll out to make sure that we're both meeting our fiscal policy objectives as a province, but then of course our workforce development objectives as well.
Emily Mumbercat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, I'll say this, is that I'm sure that the department didn't go to Treasury and say we want a budget that says we're going to ask the community college to cut 3% over 4 years. We both have a bit of experience with that, but I will argue some of your comments that the government caused this loss completely. This argument that this is something because of other jurisdictions are going through the same thing, I don't buy it all. Largest revenues in history, largest transfers in history, coming out of COVID with one of the strongest economies in North America. This idea that we're asking the community college and other organizations within government to reduce because it's happening in every other jurisdiction, I just don't buy. I've been around too long to see what can be done and what has been done. And this is no reflection of you, Deputy. This is just this message coming from the government that every department is using the same message around, well, it's happening in every other jurisdiction. I would argue that it never had to happen in this jurisdiction because what essentially it has done is destroyed the morale of the public service and has really destroyed the morale of departments, whether they're internal to government or external, because all these departments are grappling with, frankly, the mismanagement of the finances of this province. So my next question, I'm going to continue around the Nova Scotia Community College. The government has stated that Nova Scotia's economic future largely depends on a skilled trade workforce. How is the government going to ensure that staffing reductions at NSCC don't reduce this workforce?
Deputy Grant.
Great, thank you for the question. We all want the same thing, whether it's in the department, all of us here in this room, the community college, employers, families, students, et cetera, which is to create meaningful employment opportunities for individuals to attach to these critical sectors, to be involved in building out infrastructure that's required for our province, for our country, as a lot of national dialogue has been playing out related to building out sovereign capabilities as well, whether that's in defense, in energy, public infrastructure, transportation infrastructure. It's an extraordinary time to be both interested and someone who's involved in the trades. There is significant opportunity, and there will be considerably going forward. So to that end, I mentioned earlier about the Institute. This is a real critical way of ensuring industry voice is injected into the training that happens, so that there's the least amount of daylight as possible in terms of what industry needs and what's the training that's happening. We're working with Construction Sector of Council and with union trades on other training opportunities as well. Over the last year or so, great success with what we call an enhanced direct entry, which would be providing foundational skills led by industry training providers to have cohorts of individuals that are coming out and they're ready to attach and into the workforce. And that program, employers do obligate themselves to hire at the back end, which is really critical. We look at many different avenues, and notably, better understanding, I think, will come in a week or more of the federal government announcements related to supports for apprentices. This all has the effect of lifting the ecosystem that supports training providers and apprentices to make sure we have the workforce we need for many of these projects.
Thank you. MLA Member Cat with about 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that. And there are a lot of opportunities that are coming. Thankful for the federal government vis-a-vis the military. That is a huge injection of the federal government into this province, and a lot of work and exciting work ahead for the department. And thank God the federal government's doing it. It's the same with the apprentice program. It's federal government money that's coming into the province, and I know that the department will do excellent work to make sure that they do whatever they can to adjust to that. I just go back to the fact that we're seeing these injections from the federal government around the military. Exciting in Sydney too, as well, with polar ice vessel facility. But we're doing the opposite here. We're actually cutting millions of dollars from the community college. We know layoffs are happening. We know programs are in jeopardy. And at a time when, and I'll get into some more questions, I'm going to run out of time when it comes to the Skills Institute. My concern is that we're doing the opposite here. The government's making decisions to cut because they have to. We're talking about resource development, but we're cutting from the community college system. We're talking about offshore, but we're cutting from the community college system. Like, these are the people that, if you're out there saying that you're going to be doing these things, that you want to actually ramp up these programs that people can apply for and be part of. There's a lot of, and I'm saying this as just someone who's been talking to really dozens and dozens and dozens of NSCC employees around the province. Everybody's scared. Like, this is year one. Right, year 1 of 4, where you're looking at potentially programs that are in jeopardy and people who are going to lose their jobs, and it paints the wrong picture for me. That the government's making these financial decisions, which the department has to deal with ultimately, that is actually cutting programs and cutting jobs at a time when, at the same time, they're talking about, we're going to ramp up the offshore and we're going to ramp up resource development, and it doesn't make sense to me. So I guess with what my last question, how many of these jobs at NSCC were unionized versus non-unionized that are cut?
Deputy Grant, 8 seconds.
It is, the journey we're on for the department and NSCC is to achieve many different results. One of them is fiscal.
Thank you. That concludes the Liberal time for questioning. We'll now move on to the PC caucus, and I'll go to MLA Timmins.
Thank you for coming. DM Grant, you mentioned strong workplace, strong economy. Thank you for that. It's a nice quote to follow through with, for sure. In Victoria, the lakes are traditional industries for tourism and fisheries and farming, of course. And tourism is growing. quite, especially with the ski hill operations and so on. But we also have a new industry coming, which is exciting, and that will be the return of the gypsum plant as well. So my question is, how does the Labor Standard Code support workers in Nova Scotia in a general form, but a little focus on the tourism industry as well as the fisheries?
Deputy Grant?
Great. Thank you very much for the question. As mentioned in a prior question from a colleague, Labor Standards Code is structured of being a minimum set of standards and requirements and protections. It's really robust and serves employees and employers. I mentioned about a number of different areas of which we've had recent improvements. Those apply to workers across the province. With respect to opportunities in some of the key sectors that you identified, one other part of the department that's really important is Employment Nova Scotia. And our Nova Scotia Works network, where we try to support individuals that are looking to connect into jobs and careers in local communities. And the upside of this network, we have, I think we're 15 providers now of 14 locations across the province, is to really granularly understand the employer needs within communities and make connections and attachments for individuals, whether they are recently graduated or they have a mid-career transition in their life for any number of reasons. But we take, very importantly, the role that we have on attaching workers to high demand and high value sectors. And in fact, we'll be further leaning into that with our service providers as well, of really looking at the growth sectors in Nova Scotia and enhancing our intentionality, both through their efforts, through our agreements with them, et cetera, so that employers are able to access the workforce they need to be able to grow and scale and achieve their productivity goals. And when employers are able to do that with wonderful employees in the province, we all benefit greatly by way of that lifted tide in terms of economic activity.
Thank you. MLA Timmins.
How has the code evolved to reflect the changing workforce, workplace realities?
Deputy Grant.
Great, thank you for the question. Again, over the last number of years, there's really been some important improvements related to Labor Standards Code, related to workers' compensation as well, which is a really critical system. So again, just for summary's sake, but in response to a prior question, since 2023, there have been measures related to enhancing protected leave for end of pregnancy without birth. There have been the inclusion of gradual onset stress as a compensable injury. We've had lots of discussions about the importance of reflecting psychological injury and our understanding our policies and protections for workers. A renewed and very important understanding that injury is not just physical. Further to that, we've had supporting workers through efforts with ourselves, WCB, many others. Organized labor has been critical about finding pathways and avenues to support workers on their journey of return to work. So around duty to cooperate as an example. Also in 2025, the inclusion of harassment policies for employers, really a critical measure. And then two pieces related to Labor Standards Code, which is really important, which is now 5 unpaid sick days protected for workers, as well as an increase in domestic violence leave for individuals from 3 days to 5 days. So those are some of the recent changes related to worker supports.
Thank you. MLA Timmins.
How does LSI ensure foreign workers understand their rights?
To Deputy Grant. Deputy Grant.
I really, again, appreciate that question and a really important one. We have a system in place where an employer, before being able to hire a temporary foreign worker, is required to receive an employment registration certificate. We walk them, I have a copy here, it's accessible. We require them to identify their requirement, activities, et cetera. It is reviewed by the Labor Standards Division, and a certificate is issued. Last year, we would have issued over 4,000. They're provided for 1 year, so an employer has to renew every year. The effect is it screens employers before hiring, so we also have the ability to cross-check against OHS or various other violation databases. And it also gives us the ability to, if needed, block repeat offenders, if you will, related to various violations. But it also gives a clear sense for employers of what their obligations are. It's also a federal program, so the federal government has requirements as well that employers articulate to temporary foreign workers about what their rights are. If our staff are on site doing spot checks, as an example, I also have a copy of this, but there will be cards that are given out to workers that are in 5 different languages: English, Spanish, simplified Chinese, Arabic, and French, to ensure that workers have a clear understanding of what their rights are. We use partners as well in that regard to disseminate information, but that's also a space that we continue to reflect on. The education and awareness of workers of what their rights are is critical in the success of our system as a whole. So reports provided by partners that are here at the table and future dialogue will continue to inform what our efforts are to really make sure that we're getting a clear understanding among the workers of what their rights are. And just as a, if you will, a public service announcement, anyone who feels like there are issues that require to be resolved, they can reach out to our department if it's safety related, 1-800-9-LABOR. If it is labor standards related, 1-888-315-0110 for our labor standards folks. And that can be done either forthright with identification or anonymously too as well. But really important that people feel confident of reaching out to regulators, to authorities for matters that require resolution.
Thank you. MLA Timmons.
On to
MLA Fedare.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the entire witnesses here today. And I just want to applaud you for the incredible work you're doing. I always believe that people are at the center of everything we do, whether it's government, politics, business, enterprise. Regardless, people must always remain at the core. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to have this type of conversation. I always believe context is important, and so that's why conversations like this are always very important, because sometimes you could watch something from afar without proper context. You can begin to read things sometimes that are not even there, and sometimes we get to hear that when we hear what is happening, and sometimes from my members opposite. I think some of the things that's clear today in so far in the conversations that I've heard, because I've taken out my time just to listen to the questions and some of the remarks and conversations. I could hear that there are real concerns, for workers around wages, around hours, around job security. And also, I could also hear that there's some important progress that's being made around safety, around enforcement, around workplace protection. In Clayton Park West, which I represent, it is a very diverse community. It's a community with newcomers. It's a community with professionals, young professionals, families. And these issues are real for people who are trying to work, who are trying to support themselves, and who are trying to build a stable life. So I would like to focus my question around the systems we're responding and to how we can continue to evolve to meet these expectations of some of the people that I've just painted across. So my question is simply this. I just want you to, that's the department, if they can walk us through here, how is Nova Scotia able to protect workers in the workplace, particularly those who feel vulnerable, because we've heard that there might be some people who might be afraid either to come forward or to come out, to express their concern. I've heard that in some of the remarks in the context of today around being able to do proactive, waiting for vulnerable people to come. So I'm curious, if you were able to work, through us as a committee around how we're able to protect these vulnerable workers who are either hesitant in coming forward or how those protections are being improved constantly. Because at the end of the day, I always believe that life is a journey, right? And one of the things I've seen, or I continue to say, is the fact that you always have to look from the gauge of where were we, where are we, and where are we going. And from the context of what I see, we're not where we used to be, but we're definitely not where we are going. So I just want to know what are the steps we're using to improve in that lenses, that context, to ensure that we're able to protect, the valuable, people who help with productivity, and will ensure that we're able to deliver services and, have a viable or vibrant economy. My member opposite was speaking a lot about federal government money, but it's the people who are at the heart of it that will convert capital into being productive. So I don't know if Deputy Minister could help me out there.
Deputy Grant.
I greatly appreciate the question. This is all of these areas, but constant reflection of how do we, have a list of two things. The things that we are doing really good and we accelerate and continue to reflect on service excellence, and the areas of which, represent with further understanding from how policies, services, et cetera, how get operationalized, of where we can have improvements. And engagement with system partners and organizations are critical in that regard. Going back to the response and questions around the ability for workers to be able to outreach and having a complaints-based process that is robust. Education awareness is a real critical piece of that, including continually, us here will be reflecting on building trust with community and with workers as well, so they know that they can reach out again and have issues considered and resolved, and do so in a trusted way. And there are various trusted access points, of course, beyond government, and folks here at the table, and then many other organizations like ISANS and YWCA, et cetera. Those are all critical partners, all in service of supporting workers in real terms, and of course them understanding what their rights are. We have, I referenced in my opening remarks, this is labor standards across, but 16,000 inquiries received through emails, website, interaction calls, et cetera. That to me speaks to a system where there is a robust usage and interaction. And that's wonderful. And again, how do we keep reflecting on how we operate as government? As an example, some recent feedback we've received is a newcomer community having a higher propensity maybe for interactions on WhatsApp as an application. And does that, what would we do with that? What does that mean for us? I appreciate all of your time, and you suffered through a demonstration that I had on NovaSafe at our most recent Human Resources Committee. And one of the great things with NovaSafe is the platform being able to access Google Translate, which then allows us to tap into 240 languages. Taking that functionality and considering that in many of our other areas around labor standards, et cetera, is something that we reflect on, and how we can take those principles and literally maybe that function and expand across the board. So there's really a lot of efforts across the continuum of what I'll call kind of these three critical E's, which are employer oversight, education, and enforcement, of looking at how we can keep improving, because the end goal is so critical, which is workers that feel comfortable, safe, they're able to come, support filling labor market need, labor gaps, and help employers grow. A few other stats I wanted to reference as well. 2021, we would have had 15,000 work permits in Nova Scotia. We're about 35,000 in 2025. Our inventory for our nomination streams is into the thousands, a very high demand. Our landings last year in Nova Scotia were 9,180, with about north of 4,500 accepted nominations last year. Again, this to me shows a system that people have confidence. They want to come to Nova Scotia, and for lots of great reasons. An extraordinary place to work and live. But here is a department always reflecting on how this can keep improving and keep being better, and responding to changes and evolutions in workers and employers and job sites, and of course responding to technological advancements as well.
Thank you. MLA Fatherway.
Okay. It's really exciting hearing some of the things you've said today. I love the fact that you talked about meeting people where they are using technology. I know that WhatsApp is not something that is very common here in Nova Scotia, but I'm seeing that we're beginning to become nimble and agile, because at the end of the day, it's important for government to always be nimble and agile, and that also means that we are willing to try new things. And I seem to hear that being echoed loudly here, that there's a willingness to try new things with the Google Translate and the likes, to be able to reach as many languages as possible, so people can feel some sense of connection and some sense of belonging. I think that's really incredible. I know that we've spoken about a bit about. I just want to also talk a bit about the requirements around the harassment prevention that we have presently within the workforce. I know that today we heard some witness or some individual who felt like they stood up or they voiced out maybe their health concern or something, and as a result of that, it led to them losing their job or something. I'm just curious around, how are these new requirements around harassment and prevention in the workplace? How is it helping to build a culture where workers feel safe, to come forward, so that the mindset will not be, it's better for me to conceal something, but the mindset will be that there's an environment where I feel safe, because anytime people feel safe, people are able to bring out their best foot, and people are able to contribute effectively. So I just want you to talk to me or talk to us as a committee today regarding what these new requirements are around harassment and prevention, and just helping us create a viable and comfortable and safe workplace for everyone, regardless of race, culture, or background. Thank you.
Deputy Grant.
Thanks for the question, and that's exactly what everyone deserves, which is a workplace, regardless of any characteristics of an individual, that they feel safe and that they can come to work in a way of being themselves and free of harassment. So yes, in September of 2025, there was a requirement for employers to have prevention policies in place. We, as a department, have undertaken a great deal of work, whether that is templates, webinars, et cetera, of really supporting employers with getting ramped up. The policies will require things like needs and requirements for investigation and follow-up, et cetera. But I would also say, in addition to that, maybe the employer and site-based activity, but individuals who also feel like there are violations or issues that need to be resolved, they can also reach out to our team at 1-800-9-LABOR, and occupational health and safety officers are available. I should have mentioned earlier as well, but our labor standards folks, our OHS officers, have and continually reflect on trauma-informed training and cultural competencies as well, so that we are presenting and engaging in a way that is appropriate and welcoming and supportive for individuals that are reaching out. it's been, so September, we're in 8 months of the requirement for harassment policies. And yes, we've been working with Path to Compliance to be sure. It now forms part of the checklist of activities that OHS officers, when they're on site, look through, and it'll form part of our order making, not dissimilar to any number of other OHS-related activities. So it's both important, of course, to have the statutory construct by way of the legislative requirement, but then how this gets operationalized is something that we'll be continuing to reflect on with follow-through to make sure that both as a regulator, we're being appropriately responding to if there's a new understanding or a filling of gaps that might not have been conceptualized at the outset, but it'll be something that we'll be monitoring very closely.
Thank you. MLA Fatheray.
There's been a discussion here today around Nova Scotia, how it stands with other jurisdiction, right? I just want, can you outline the key legislative changes, particularly through the stronger workplace safety, regarding strengthening protection and improving conditions for workers across the province? Because we've been hearing a lot about where does Nova Scotia stand. I'm just wondering what are those, just outline key legislative changes, particularly through the stronger workers' place for Nova Scotia strengthening protection and improving conditions for workers across the province. Yeah.
Deputy Grant.
Thank you again for the question. A really important milestone in really, I would say, like a 2 to 3 year period of 2023 with the review for workers' compensation system. In 2024, there were measures through Stronger Workplaces for Nova Scotia Act that included a requirement for a 5-year review, which is critical. The requirement for harassment policies, which took effect in September 2025, which we've had discussion about this afternoon. The inclusion of the Occupational Health and Safety Division within the safety branch as fully recoverable from the Provincial Accident Fund, which is critical so that our teams, of course, have the resources they require to execute their duties and responsibilities, as well as advancing with the duty to cooperate, which means employers and employees, but the system has a responsibility to ensure individuals are supported in a timely, appropriate return to the workplace. So those pieces were centrally included in the 2024 Stronger Workplaces for Nova Scotia Act, but then last year we had a further continuum of that, of those activities led by government. So we also had legislation last year that indexed benefits for injured workers to 100% of CPI. And these are all important measures reflecting on the supports required for workers, but injured workers, and reflecting on a system to be responsive to being affordable for employers, but also crucially, appropriately having benefits for workers. And that continues to be an effort of all of the system partners related to workplace safety, is continuing always to push down injury rates through prevention activities and, where required, compliance activities, and ensuring we have a sustainable system that really does meet the moment for employers and employees. And that work will be very much ongoing for years to come.
Okay, we'll move on to MLA McLeod.
In oil and gas, there's a saying that goes, a safe company is a successful company. And we see here in the province, there's some new emerging industries, and there's some industries that we're getting back to after a certain absence. It's been a while since we've talked about offshore Nova Scotia, and today we've talked about mining a little bit. So we need to get up to speed in terms of safety. And I'm curious what the department is doing in terms of modernizing workplace safety and making sure we have the best practices in place.
Deputy Grant.
Again, greatly appreciate the question, and you're right. There are a number of different industries where there has been activity. So to your point, offshore oil and gas, whether it was Cohasset Panook before, Sable, then into Deep Panook, and then we've had some exploration activity for, a period of time, and then now we start to see this increase back up. And a really exciting announcement with the recent bid for some parcels with an exploration activity. Within the safety branch, we are always really reflecting on emergent industries, but then of course new technologies as well. Comes to the offshore, certainly we have a role. There's its new name eludes me, but there's an offshore board that's a regulator that has a role to play. Federal government has a role to play as well. And so for us, on mining activity as an example, we've been in the midst of a review of looking at our underground and surface mining regulations, connecting with experts and thought leaders and, of course, operators in this space, discussions with colleagues really across Canada to make sure that our system is modern and responsive to new technology, but also always critically is always in support of worker safety. All that we do really in the safety branch, whether that's prevention, education, awareness, compliance, all these things are all in service of a safer workplace. And so back to the question, this is a priority for us to make sure that we are a modern, sophisticated regulator that has expertise and is responsive for lots of reasons. Yes, again, back to worker safety, that's ever present, but then for employers and companies as well, that we're able to be responsive to them for related to their practices as well, and that we can undertake compliance activities in a way to keep people safe and keep people protected.
Thank you. Emily McLeod with just over 2 minutes.
Okay, I've been trying to find a text I deleted this morning from my phone. It was actually asking me if I was interested in work. It was a scam. I don't know how they get our numbers, but I think we've all received them. There's scammers everywhere, and you know what? Unfortunately, we've seen stories on the news internationally and across Canada about scammers and stuff that have to do with recruitment of workers to Canada. So with that in mind, like the recruiter licensing framework, how is that set up in order to protect people coming to this country?
Deputy Grant, just over a minute.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. In addition to what I was raising earlier about employment registration certificates, which is a critical part related to temporary foreign workers, we also have a requirement that agents are in fact licensed by the Director of Labor Standards. Within our division, there's a public registry for licenses as well, so that employers can have a clear understanding of individuals that they're working with are in fact appropriately licensed. I would also say for any individual that feels like they are being exposed inappropriately for those kind of activities, again, please reach out to the department. We can help and support, including areas that we have authority and jurisdiction and oversight of, and then those that we don't, that we can help and triage as well. But reaching out is always a better approach than an assumption, which might result in any number of potential negative outcomes.
Order. Thank you. That concludes the PC first round of questioning. We'll now move on to our second round of questioning, and each caucus in the opposition will receive 8 minutes, and then the governing caucus will have 16 minutes after that. we will go to MLA Gallagher.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start off with a few questions for Ms. Gomez. I think we all understand the importance of our temporary foreign worker program and how crucial these workers are to our agriculture and seafood sector. And they're generally, as I understand it, they are generally covered by the same protections as Nova Scotia workers under the Labour Code. However, there's one big missing piece. Migrant workers in these sectors do not have MSI coverage. So Ms. Gomez, I'm curious if you could tell me what happens when one of these workers get sick on the job, because as it says in your reports, which I think each MLA received last week, actually, the Heavy Hearts and Minds report, it says that the majority of respondents, 77% in our Heavy Hearts and Minds study, worried that they could lose their job if they took time off for physical or mental health needs. If you could tell me more.
Ms. Gomez.
Thank you. Yes, so in Nova Scotia, you have to have a one-year work permit to be eligible for MSI. And we know that migrant workers in the agricultural sector, many come through the Seasonal Agricultural Workers Program. They may come and often do come year after year, sometimes for decades, to Nova Scotia. But their work permits are only up to 8 months of the year for these workers, so they're systemically excluded from MSI. When that happens, they would have access and should have access to a private health insurance, which is tied to their employment. But as we saw in Carrie Ann's case, when her employment was terminated, so was her private insurance. We know that in provinces like Ontario and Quebec, if you're coming to Canada through the same program called the Seasonal Agricultural Workers Program, you do have access to healthcare coverage publicly on arrival. So that's a situation where Nova Scotia is behind other provinces. And what happens is it's very challenging and stressful for Carrie Ann. She was not only battling cancer, also in cancer treatments and having to advocate for her right to healthcare access. Ultimately, she was able to make a special application for federal healthcare coverage, which was granted. But the province has a responsibility to play there. We supported another migrant worker from Mexico who worked in the Annapolis Valley, and his employer did not provide training and asked him to undertake unsafe work. And that worker became seriously injured. The employer did not have workers' compensation. The worker did not have a right to MSI, and the private insurance was not applicable because this was a workplace situation, and now the worker was told that he owes over $100,000 for having a workplace injury in Nova Scotia.
Thank you. MLA Gallagher.
Thank you. In the same document you handed us all, number 3, recommendations to the Nova Scotia government. Number 3 says, strengthen enforcement and compliance mechanisms by conducting routine, targeted, and unannounced inspections in key sectors, employing migrant workers to ensure compliance with the Labor Standards Code and OSHA. I'm curious if the Deputy Minister Grant could tell me if unexpected, what do we call it? Unannounced inspections happen on farm or in seafood plants.
Thank you, MLA Gallagher. Before we go to the deputy, just want to confirm you're tabling the document. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Deputy Grant.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. We do unannounced spot checks. I mentioned earlier as well, one of the activities, in addition to observation, discussions, et cetera, is also where we can providing workers with information cards of what their rights are. We also have the director and the department advanced with 40 proactive investigations as well. last year. This could cover many different areas, whether that's pay miscalculations, break rules, failing to pay for time worked, overtime. And in those instances as well, the director also has the authority for issuing orders to comply or orders to pay, which may also have an impact on the employment registration certificate that I was discussing earlier.
Thank you. MLA Gallagher.
Thank you, Chair. Also in this report, which I will table, it says overall 43% of migrant workers surveys reported working conditions as one of their top sources of emotional distress. So, and 79% of survey respondents across the agriculture and seafood processing sector indicated a need for essential information on their rights, services, and supports as migrant workers. So I guess it sounds like the information isn't matching up. The Center for Migrant Workers is saying migrant workers need more help, but then the department is saying we are going out and performing inspections. Can you maybe talk more to that? Because it kind of sounds like the two aren't matching. Do you see what I'm saying there? Yeah.
MLA. I just gave you demotion. I'm sorry. Deputy Grant.
Oh, gave me a raise. A really important question. I greatly appreciate, because I think two things are going to be true, which is mentioned about the activities that we undertake, and we also take the feedback and experience of partners here, of individuals. I mean, throughout the report, there are quotes from experiences from individuals that we absolutely continue to reflect on. And so our efforts for, this will be the other thing that's true, our efforts for where we can enhance education and awareness will be ever present in a lot of ways, because it's a critical part of people knowing what their rights are when they come, while they're here, so that they can reach out, whether that's complaint, access information, et cetera. I had mentioned earlier about some of our efforts in thinking about various languages too as well, all these different considerations for how we reach people so that they have a clear understanding of the rights. And as you had mentioned, I think in a preamble to an earlier question, of the rights for workers, temporary foreign worker or otherwise, are consistent for OHS and for Labor Standards Code.
MLA Gallagher, 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Oh my gosh, that went really fast. That was the fastest 8 minutes of my life, I think. Thank you, Deputy Minister, for saying that. I just want to make sure that
Order.
We're not failing them.
Thank you. We'll move on to Liberal Caucus for the second round. MLA Membercat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to talk about the provincial nominee program, and this is really a question for all MLAs. Because I'm sure that many of the MLAs, if not all, across the province are hearing from people about their application, and deadlines are looming. And it's probably one of the most significant requests that we're seeing out of the office in Sydney. Particularly, we're in the core of the community, so we have lots of folks that are coming in looking for updates. As we all appreciate, people are trying to plan. I've had the opportunity, I asked this during estimates too as well, through you, Mr. Chair. I guess the question I have is for everyone who's seeing folks come through the office that are waiting on the status of their application, what's the best message that we can give at this point, like from a timeline perspective, so that when folks are coming in and people are looking for an update, the information that, if we could get more information from the department, all MLAs, regardless of where they represent, would really help, because these folks are waiting, families are waiting, and frankly, our staff in our office and other offices are really trying to find out like what that best answer is to tell folks, because we continuously hear from people who are waiting. So through you, what's the best answer that we can give at this point for people who are waiting?
Deputy Grant.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. The context of where we are today is really important. So there's been lots of discussion. Again, everyone in the room would be aware of recent decisions by federal government for allocation. So for here in Nova Scotia, we have an allocation amount that's about $3,700. I mentioned earlier about the status of our inventory of being in the thousands, give or take, we're at about 10,000. So there's significant demand and interest for living and working within Nova Scotia, and again, for lots of good reasons. But we are at a really dynamic time with the state of the program. A lot of individuals that are currently living here that have applied in. We attempt to keep community updated through our departmental blog about what sectoral priorities are. For some time, of course, construction and healthcare has been a critical priority. The expression of interest system that we operate within now allows for individuals to identify that they have an interest and a desire to be nominated here in the province. And then, like many other jurisdictions in Canada, administratively, it creates a pool of candidates. And so when we look at our high priority areas, of course, when we reflect on things like work permit expiries, those are all related to or considerations for decisions that we would do for sending accepted nominations out to individuals. I really do appreciate the question, the sense of uncertainty for some individuals. And again, it's all across Canada a high demand and a lot of individuals that are currently here, including reflecting on the growth that we would have had in non-permanent residents in 21, 22, 23, et cetera. So a lot of individuals that are here in Nova Scotia. The number of permanent residents or the number of nominations, about 90% of those are individuals who are temporary residents and living here today. So I'm respectful of time. I won't be too long-winded, but there are several considerations, but we do try to keep people updated through our blog post for the broader community.
Thank you. Emily McGrath.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this was an important conversation during estimates too as well. That if there is a message, something that we could provide to folks for all MLA offices, just something from the department would really go a long way for people who are in the program waiting, but also for our staff who are really navigating families that are coming in. Emotions are there. People are waiting. People are anxious. So I would just, this is an opportunity at committee to, speak on behalf of all MLAs, really, who are trying to support these folks. If there is some sort of direction that you could give our offices to say, okay, you're waiting. We can appreciate too that some are waiting. Some deadlines or some dates are shorter than others. The initial message coming from the minister was that it's about 6 weeks before people would hear in that window. This was important for me at committee today because we are literally dealing with hundreds of people in our office. You know what I mean? Like Sydney is just every day. And rightfully so, we want to do whatever we can to support people who are coming in our office particularly, and I'm sure there's others, but where we're in the core, we're getting a lot of it. And I just implore the department, if there's a message or a contact or a number that we can give to people to get an update, because we can appreciate that there's a lot, and there's a lot of people who are in this process right now that are just looking for answers, and we don't have it. So like we're doing our best, and we have file numbers and we try our best to navigate, but there just needs to be some sort of clear direction for the MLA office to say, okay, this is your timeline, this is where you're at, this is what you can anticipate. These are the priority areas, and it's difficult. You're in a situation where the numbers have been reduced, right? And that's not lost on me, but we need to find a way to give better information to people who are in that system right now, because they've come here, they're trying to establish roots here, they've contributed to our communities, their families have contributed to our communities. They give back in a number of ways and have, and we owe it to them. We owe it to them to say, okay, this is the process, this is where you're at. I don't have that information in front of me in my office, and it's heartbreaking. Right, it really is, because we're dealing with a lot of them. My staff has to deal with a lot of them, and we just want to give people answers to their questions so they can plan for their lives. So I implore, how much time do I have left, Mr. Chair?
The deputy would have a minute.
He would have a minute? Okay, well, if he would like the opportunity to respond to that. I had some other questions, but time is what it is. But I just implore, we're dealing with a lot of this, and so are other MLAs. We need to give people answers.
Now the deputy has 50 seconds. Deputy Grant.
I appreciate it. I'm going to invite comment from my colleague, ADM Vanessa Chouinard, but before I do, again, I appreciate the comments, and it's also an opportunity to I appreciate the efforts from individuals that are working in MLA offices. To your point, there's a lot of inquiries and volume, and people do so in a respectful way, and then try to connect people into the department where they can as well. So a deep amount of thanks. But with that, maybe to my colleague.
ADM Chouinard, 15.
15, okay. Happy to talk after as well, for sure. Heartbreaking. We're very empathetic. So an email actually went out in April, as well as an update to our blog, which isolated very specific. Okay, yeah.
We'll go back to the governing PC caucus. MLA McLeod.
If you'd like to please, you can continue to answer that question shortly.
ADM Chouinard.
Sure, happy to. So absolutely, I'll take a little bit more time now on the upfront to say we completely appreciate. We completely appreciate the challenge that, frankly, MLAs are dealing with, but most importantly, applicants to the program. And as deputy, and you did highlight, certainly there was policy change at the federal level, which caused a lot of the, I'll call it, disruption to the overall immigration system. But I think beyond the change in allocation numbers, it's also caused a shift in what needs to be in expectations of individuals who are applying, because a few years ago, lots of spots, lots of interest, but they sort of matched. So there is an expectation by a lot of applicants that expect within a couple of months, I submit, and that's just not what they're seeing, right? So the other thing that's shifted is in December of 25 is we shifted to an expression of interest system. The deputy started to mention that. What's really important about that for everybody is that it means that every single application is not guaranteed to be assessed. Therefore, if someone is sitting there waiting to hear, they may not hear if they're not selected across a priority occupation. So that's a key difference I wanted to share. So we do try to highlight that for individuals, that there won't be a guaranteed response from us. So what we do like is to point them to our blog, again, updated just in April, and we tried to get as precise as we could on the occupations that are considered priority. And those are the items, those are the applicants that each month when we do a draw from the expression of interest system for applications, we're looking for those priority occupations. So if someone is not in one of those priority occupations, I certainly encourage them to potentially, if they can, consult a lawyer, immigration lawyer, or a registered immigration consultant to help to understand and navigate the various options at the federal level as well. The other thing I will highlight is that our focus in processing and when we're selecting applicants is really also supported by work permit expiry. So right now we're really focused on work permits expiring in 2026. So we do appreciate people have work permits expiring in 2027. Those are not going to be priority for our team right now. What we're really trying to do is get in front of the 2026 expiries. Does that help?
That's good, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, ADM Chouinard. MLA McLeod.
Thank you, Chair. And I had one last question, and it has to do with immigrant workers. And I've found, immigrant workers have a tremendous amount of respect for elected officials, probably more than the average person. But they come to our MLA offices sometimes seeking advice, and I think we all have a tremendous amount of respect for immigrant workers, and I think it'd be helpful to know what does the province do to support the rights and protections of these immigrant workers.
Deputy Grant.
I really appreciate the question. Thank you. I think a lot of what we have discussed throughout the day really covers a full spectrum. There are, to reiterate on the safety OHS side, labor standards code, there are, all of those protections, are applying to workers regardless. But there are special considerations, and whether it's related to the requirement for the employment registration certificate or our activities, our proactive enforcement and outreach activities, the spot checks that we were discussing and referencing earlier, there really is a full spectrum here that requires consideration of making sure that people are fully aware of what their rights are prior to, when they arrive, throughout the entirety of their journey and their experience, and ensuring that as a department we have appropriate measures for employment, employer oversight, education, and prevention, really critical, and of course enforcement too as well. In 2011, there were a significant set of amendments that were advanced here in Nova Scotia that relate to the director authorities for investigation and due process, the framework related to agents, and the inability, the prohibition, if you will, on the issuance of fees, either directly or indirectly, to a worker related to recruitment activities. That's a really important moment in time in Nova Scotia, and also was in advance of, in 2012, the federal government instituting labor market testing as well, and then even later in 2014, the requirement for LMIAs. So over the last number of years, there really have been a number of measures, both provincially and federally, of looking at how we appropriately support and protect workers. But as we've discussed this morning, we don't sit here today feeling like a job is complete. It's not, and it will continue to be a focus and a priority for ours of ensuring we have good quality outreach for the workers and that they feel supported throughout their journey.
Thank you. And we'll go to MLA Rushton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you everybody for the conversation today. A lot of important topics being discussed. I just want to clarify a couple things that I've heard over the last hour and a half, I guess. And I'd like to turn to the deputy first and just clarify: is it true that you have not yet met with the Federation of Labor?
Sorry, Deputy Grant.
I broke your one rule.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I've had, certainly before Melissa took the position, I had a number of discussions and meetings with Danny Cavanaugh, the predecessor. There was a meeting that involved our team in 2025 as well with the minister back, so about a year or so ago. Melissa and I, of course, we've seen each other, at different events. So, yes, there's been engagement beforehand, but I'll never be, I'll say this, I say it to internally with staff, and I'll never be, a version of vain enough to think I've got all the answers. I value stakeholder input and feedback a great deal, including understanding how things are getting operationalized and the perspectives they had. Melissa was identifying earlier about the joint work of the Federation of LSI and WCB. Collectively, we have advanced with a new and vulnerable worker safety training program that was developed in concert with the Federation that's available for Skills Online. So, yes, engagement previous and a deep and ongoing commitment to that going forward as well.
Thank you. MLA Rushton.
Thank you for that. Maybe just a quick time check, Mr. Chair.
7.5 minutes.
7.5 minutes. So I have two more. I have one more follow-up question, and I'd like to ask the Federation. I recognize you also had indicated there was a scheduled meeting maybe canceled. I've been at 2 different committee meetings. Was that you? No, that wasn't. I'm thinking. I apologize for that. Then I'll stand corrected on that. But in the absence of that meeting, I am curious about a statement that you made that this government's failing Nova Scotians, and I feel that with over 400 settlements that we've made with organized labor. How is that failing Nova Scotians, if we can sort of square that comment?
Ms. Marsman.
Thank you for your question. I probably said it. Do I remember saying it? I don't know what question it was about, but well, just give me a second. I think when I said failing Nova Scotia, we were talking about the, long-term care folks. This government needs to get back to the table. And I appreciate you said there were 400 settlements with organized labor, but this is one settlement that's going on for 4 weeks. These are the folks that are looking after our most vulnerable in this province. And they need to feel validated. The minister and maybe the premier need to go back to the table or go out to the rally or the picket lines and have a deep conversation with those folks.
Thank you. Emily Rushton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just say like 400 agreements to one that is ongoing. Yeah, I agree. It is 4 weeks. I do want to state that we do value that, but I also, as a person, value the process of the rights of workers in their strike and the negotiation process. So we'll park that sort of for right now. One question I did want to ask the department is I come from a sector before politics where psychological health is very important. So how does recognizing psychological health and safety under the Occupational Health and Safety Act mark a shift in how Nova Scotians define a safe workplace?
Deputy Grant.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Just, a few years ago, this government, again, it's a really critical milestone for the entire ecosystem of having gradual onset stress become a compensable injury. And you're seeing more and more WCB employers, et cetera, but a great deal of effort on a reflection that psychological injuries require a great deal of attention and have a very similar footing, if you will, from a response requirement for support, et cetera, as a physical injury. With WCB, this is something we'll be monitoring closely about the nature of claims and in what areas, and again, back to prior responses about how policies are getting operationalized. But these are, again, critical milestones of how we're supporting individuals with a modern understanding of how we support the full individual, both mind and body.
Thank you. MLA Rushton.
Mr. Chair, I thank you that, and I know from my previous colleagues, certainly appreciated some of the changes that are taking place. I'll move on to one more quick question if we have enough time to get the answer in this as well. And out of the changes that were legislative changes that were introduced in 2024, how does government plan to measure the effectiveness of those legislative changes?
Deputy Grant with 3.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. There's a number of different areas to measure. Certainly, compliance is a really important one. So back to a commentary on harassment policies requirement as well of continuing to track compliance among employers, and certainly getting feedback of the experience with individuals as well, whether that's directly through to us, through our variety of our chains. I mentioned earlier about 16,000 interactions received through emails, websites, calls, et cetera. All of that information for us is critical on then reflecting about our delivery mechanisms for services, whether the policies are meeting the intent, the impacted intent, and again, kind of then included in our work going forward on policy, programming, et cetera. The 5-year review is also a critical requirement and time horizon. So we'll be measuring, again, the usage, the application, the compliance, all those areas, and then reflecting both in real time, but then also at that future milestone to make sure that we assess and reflect any changes. So the adaptiveness of the system and the flexibility of the system to continue to meet the moment for workers and employers is really quite critical.
Thank you. Emily Rushton with 2 minutes.
2 minutes. So just quickly on that 5-year review, that's not just one-time 5-year review. That's every 5 years, correct? And how does that process work out in what you learn in the first 5 years? And obviously, it's not just a 5-year mandate. Obviously, if there's something that's brought to the department, how would you action that to go in with that mandate as well in between the 5 years?
Deputy Grant.
So 5-year requirement was, I believe it emanated from the review that was undertaken at the time, a really comprehensive review included in statutory requirement. But to the point, a year after, we made the Department advanced, legislature had approved and agreed amendments to workers' compensation across a number of different areas because we felt like the moment and the opportunity kind of required it. And so there's been changes to injured worker benefits as well. Certainly didn't wait for that 5-year horizon. That was a real critical moment. And I think for where the workers' compensation system is today, as an example, these are the very critical and important conversations we get to have as a system now, for the next number of years of now, since we're in a place of sustainability from a financial state of the accident fund, if you will, we'll be able to continue to reflect on measures that would enhance benefit for worker, and then of course the affordability for employers as well. These are conversations that as a system we haven't been able to have for many, many years because the financial state of the system was such that it just didn't present itself. So I think there's lots of really important dialogue and tactics and action to come from both government, WCB, et cetera, related to workers' compensation.
Thank you. Well done, right at 1 second. Very good. Thank you. So that concludes our questioning with our committee members for this afternoon's meeting. Thank you for the conversation. It was definitely a lot of good information to hear from, for sure. We'd like to give our guests an opportunity to provide some closing statements. So what I thought I might do is maybe go in reverse order. We can begin with Ms. Gomez, and then we'll go across the table that way. Ms. Gomez.
Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak today. I think it's great that everyone has acknowledged the importance of respecting migrant workers, and we appreciate the work being done. Still, there's much more to do to ensure that migrant workers who they receive the promise that they'll have equal rights as Nova Scotians when they come here, but in practice, that's not the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Marsman.
So thank you for the opportunity to present today. Going forward, it will take workers, employers, advocates, and decision makers working together to truly protect workers' rights in Nova Scotia. The Nova Scotia Federation of Labour is willing to work as a partner in these efforts. Together we can update Nova Scotia's labour standards to go from the weakest in Canada to the strongest, start proactive enforcement of labor standards so the rules are applied evenly and fairly in all workplaces, make it easier for workers to form a union, a right that is enshrined in Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedom, ban union busting, closures, contract flipping, and scab labor so unionized workers can have faith that their rights to a free and fair collective bargaining will be respected. And I look forward to continuing this conversation and making tangible improvements to the lives of all workers in Nova Scotia.
Thank you. And Deputy Grant for a closing statement.
I appreciate a lot of my comments on the record throughout the afternoon. Just a great deal of thanks for the invitation, for the questions. I hope it's been helpful and informative. and of course the perspectives. Part of these forums and exercises, if you will, is also listening and reflecting on perspectives provided by, of course, members, but individuals that are critical partners, supporting people in throughout the ecosystem for workers and employers. So thank you all.
Thank you. And just as a clarification, you had mentioned some information you may be able to send to the committee. That could be sent via the clerk, and then that will be sent through the committee that way. So once again, thank you to all of you for coming today for the conversation. We will now take a 3-minute recess to allow our guests to leave, and then we'll come back for just our short amount of committee business we have. So 3 minutes, we stand in recess. Order. If I could ask all of our committee members to come back to the table. Thank you again to all of our guests for coming. So we don't have a lot of committee business in front of us. Just to bring everybody's attention to correspondence that was received on a January 8th, 2026 letter from the Department of Advanced Education in response to a request for information made at the December 2nd meeting, and that was forwarded to all members on receipt, and again yesterday. Are there any questions, or just acknowledge that we've received the letter? Okay, letter is tabled and acknowledged. And in any other committee business? Seeing no other committee business, we will have our next meeting on Tuesday, June the 2nd, 2026, from 1 to 3 p.m. Our topic will be natural resource expansion and workforce development. And the witnesses at that meeting will be the Department of Natural Resources, Department of Labor, Skills and Immigration, the Nova Scotia Community College, and the Public Service Commission. So with that being said, our meeting today is adjourned. Well done.